Hey guys, I'm Evan. Welcome to Country View Acres. So 5 years ago, or maybe about 5.5 years ago, I put together what I would call my 5-year farm plan. And it was a pretty in-depth plan, and it started out as like a list of goals. What do I want to accomplish each year for the next 5 years? And it had projects, it had accomplishments, it had what type of equipment I needed to buy. It was I had this pretty in-depth goal list of how we would slowly progress every year and develop the property and turn our undeveloped land into usable land and just slowly turn our homestead into more of a farm. Well, the problem with that 5-year farm plan is I never really updated it. So it's really hard to estimate 5 years into the future. But I thought maybe we could go back and we could look at this 5-year farm plan and we could see how close was I on my goals and see how close I stuck to it, and see what things changed, what things I couldn't do, decided not to do, what things I just ran out of time on. And the reason I want to cover that is because I've already made a brand new 5-year farm plan for 2025 to 2029. And before I discuss my plans for the next 5 years so that you guys can see where I'm trying to head, where this small farm is heading and what I want to turn it into, I thought before we could discuss that, I'd just go over this last original 5-year farm plan and see how close I actually was. So let's go ahead, we'll jump into it. We'll start at the year 2020 and we'll see how we progressed all the way through 2024. So at the beginning of 2020, we had already been raising laying hens for eggs for about 4 years, and we had already raised feeder pigs for meat. We had also raised rabbits for meat as well. We had Nigerian dwarf goats, and we had fainting goats. And in the spring of 2020, this east hayfield, it was ready to be cut for the first time. It had been replanted in the fall of 2019. So one of our big goals was to cut hay for the first time. So that means we needed to go out and buy hay equipment. So we bought an old wire tie square baler, we bought an old hay rake, and we bought a sickle bar mower to try to make hay. And one of our goals was we wanted to try to get about 450 bales of hay off of the field. We wanted to sell about 250 bales, keep about 200. And that didn't quite work out that way. We made 288 bales on our first year. We did sell 125 of those bales, and we kept 163. Now, one of our other goals for 2020 was to repair the bank barn, and you can see we still have not done any major repairs to the bank barn. What we decided to do instead is we decided to build a little equipment parking area. So this is an old area where there used to be a house that was torn down. So we laid down gravel and got a nice gravel area there. And then we also got the big carport that our camper used to be in, and we transported that. We drug it over there and we placed it in that location so that we had a nice big area to at least put all of our equipment so it wasn't just laying out in the yard everywhere. Now in 2020, the only thing that we truly had fenced in was the barnyard around the bank barn. We didn't really have any pastures with any permanent fence. We were using the temporary electric netting to try to make pasture areas with. So one of our goals was to fence in all the pasture that was connected to the bank barn. And that didn't quite get 100% done in 2020. We finished it up just in January of 21. It just kind of ran over a little bit that year. But by the time we were done, I think that area right there is about 1 3/4 acres that we have fenced in for our goats that we had. So our one other goal for 2020 was to either get some beef steers or some sheep to raise. But without getting the pasture fencing completed until like January of the next year, of course, we didn't end up getting any more livestock. But we did get 2 other things done in 2020 that we didn't have on our goals list. We did build a brooder in the bank barn so that we could raise baby chickens in there. And we ended up raising our first batch of meat chickens. Now, I think we only ended up with maybe around 16 or so meat chickens that we raised that year. We had butchered chickens in the past, but they were always laying hens. But this was our first time actually getting a specific meat breed to be able to raise. And we've been raising meat chickens ever since then. So now moving on to 2021. So one of our main goals was to plant a second hayfield, our West Faith hayfield here. So one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to get some soil samples of all our pastures and hayfields so that we could start keeping records of that. So we do soil samples, maybe not every year, but at least every other year, so that we can track the progress of our soil health. So we took that soil sample and we did disc up this field. We did amend the soil with the proper fertilizer, and we planted this in the fall of 2021. So after this west hay field was planted, that brought us up to a total of 6 acres of hay that we could harvest. We could sell the extra hay and we could use the rest to be able to feed our livestock. So our next goal in 2021 was to purchase a manure spreader. We were already making compost from the old hay and manure, and we were wanting to be able to spread that on the hay fields. So I found one at auction, PTO driven, old one, and we were able to start spreading compost on the hay fields. The only problem is we only make enough compost to about cover 1 of the 6 acres. So we never have been able to make enough compost to truly fertilize all of our hay. So another goal in 2021, which is probably the biggest one, was to build our workshop / garage. And we were able to get the shell up, we get electricity to it, we got the concrete, and we got the walls insulated that year. We got it to where it was a workable space, nice space to be able to work in. Finally not working on gravel anymore. So that was a huge improvement to the property, being able to have this workshop, which the total footprint is like 52 by 76. So there's plenty of space in there to work. One other thing that happened in 2021 is I did end up partnering up with TYM tractors, and I got the T654. This is a 67 horsepower tractor to be able to use on the property. This thing was a game changer. Has so much more capability than the old antique tractors that I was running. So this was just another huge improvement to what we could do around here, and just made jobs so much easier. Now we did get one other piece of equipment in 2021, and I was so fed up with the sickle bar mower, having to struggle with it to cut hay. I ended up getting the Heston PT10 hay mower, and it was in a barn, been sitting there for years. We did have to do a little bit of work to it, but it has been my hay mower ever since. And to round up 2021, we finally got our first feeder steers that year. So now, besides raising chickens and pork, we're also now raising beef. So ever since then, we have been raising feeder steers every year, and we are slowly going to build up our own herd and start calving our own steers here pretty soon. So now for the goals for 2022. The first goal was to buy a round baler. I didn't want to have to carry and stack and just handle square bales as I got older. So I wanted a way that I could have the tractor do most of the labor, all the heavy work. And so I ended up buying this Gale 1475. This is a 4x5 round baler. I found this at a John Deere dealership, and I purchased it, brought it home. There was a few kinks to work out, a few learning curves, a few little things to fix, but it has been a good round baler over the last few years. Our next goal was to harvest the west hay field for the first time, because it was just planted in the fall the year before, and we were able to get 2 cuttings of hay off of both of the hay fields that year. We baled some of it as square bales, we baled some of it as round bales. Now our next goal was to fence in this pasture area between the bank barn and the white barn back there, and we did get that all fenced in that year, and that gave us, I think that brought us up to a total of about 3 acres that we had totally fenced in as pasture. Our fourth goal for 2022 was to take the white pole barn back there and turn it into a livestock barn and connect it to this little pasture. That way we could have the steers maybe separate from the goats, and we never ended up doing that. That stayed actually as hay storage. We started making round bales, so I needed a place to store them, so the white barn turned into a hay storage barn. So in 2022, we did work on one of our previous goals. This old bank barn here, there's a lot of repairs we want to make, but there's also a lot of modifications we want to do to it. And one of them was the back part of the barn. We wanted to open that up and use it as a kind of like a little livestock shelter area. But in the back of it, it had a slatted floor, it had pens. They used to raise hogs in it, so we had to remove the floor and all the pens. And then we ended up opening up the sides, removed part of the concrete block wall here, and it's now in a usable state where the livestock can get in there out of the rain and get a little bit of shade. Now, this still needs some work. Still needs the walls covered up, maybe the walls repaired, but at least we got it into a usable condition. So now we'll go over the goals for 2023. We're in the 4th year of this 5-year farm plan. This is where everything kind of starts going off the rails. It's really hard to kind of predict or foresee how things are going to go 4 years from now. And our goal, we had 2 main goals. One was to fence in the 12 acres in the front. We had a 12-acre field we were renting out as farmland. We wanted to take that back and we wanted to fence it in for pasture. We also wanted to plant it that fall in pasture. We didn't get either one of those things done because there was one thing that I didn't think about, is that there was the old fence lines that went down both sides of this pasture, just overgrown with old fence in there, a lot of briars, and we needed to remove all the old fence rows before we put up new fence. So that's what we ended up doing in 2023. We did a lot of fence row removal. So even though we didn't accomplish any of the goals that we had set out in 2023, we still got a lot accomplished. We cleared out a lot of fence lines, and we also installed our solar power system and started our journey toward energy independence. And we also ended up getting our first cows. We got our 2 milk cows. We got Maya and Ellie. And then we also got our first sheep in 2023. We started off with 3 ewes, a ewe lamb, and 3 ram lambs. Total of 7 sheep. Later that fall, we ended up getting a ram so that we could start breeding our new flock. So 2023 was the real start of our cattle herd and our sheep herd. So now let's move on to the goals for 2024. We didn't get any of these goals done either because they're all based off of 2023 goals being completed. So basically our farm plan is like 1 year off at this point in time. So what we had originally planned to do in 24 is we originally planned to start grazing this 12-acre field, but we never did get it fenced in. We never did get it planted. We also planned on buying more livestock, which could have meant more cows, could have meant more sheep to be able to graze this additional land. But we didn't end up doing that since we didn't have this ready. We also planned on repairing one of the wells and then running well water to all of our pastures, setting up all new waters everywhere that ran off of the well water. Would have saved us a bunch of money on buying water from the rural water system, but it would also provided water out in this pasture, but none of that was ready yet, so we didn't do any of these goals. Now, even though we didn't get any of our goals done in 2024, we did get quite a bit accomplished, even worked on some of our older goals. So the first thing we started off with was turning this white barn into more of a livestock barn and a livestock handling facility for cattle and sheep. So we started building a corral fence around the white barn right here. Now, if you remember, I was using the white barn for hay storage. So at this point in time, I needed a new way to be able to store hay. So I ended up buying the bale wrapper so that I could wrap the bales and just store them outside, and they would still be pretty much just as good as the day I baled them. And after we built the corral fence, we started fencing in the front 12 acres, as well as this little area here with the pine trees. And we built all of this fence using old oil-filled pipe. We cleaned it up, we painted it black, and we started off setting it in concrete and welding it together. And then later on, to speed up the process, ended up getting a post driver where I could drive these pipes in the ground, and then we bolted these braces together. It sped up the whole process. And then after all the braces were built, Van from Beckhart Fence, he came down, he helped us build the fence. He showed us how to install this high tensile fixed knot fence, which I think is a fantastic fence. It looks exactly the way we put it in a year ago. It doesn't look, it sags a bit, and it's just super strong fence, and I'm very happy with the way it all turned out. But we got the whole 12 acres finally fenced in. Now, we didn't end up planting the entire 12 acres in pasture grass. We planted the south side in pasture grass, and we ended up planting the north side in a warm season annual mix, kind of like a sorghum Sudan grass. And I wanted to be able to plant something and be able to start grazing the field fairly quickly. So it gave us some summer grazing, but with the addition of the bale wrapper, it opened up like a whole new opportunity where we could actually cut and bale the sorghum Sudan grass wet and turn that into silage in those wrapped bales, or into a haylage bale, which is a fermented feed. It's actually a little higher feed quality. And that also allowed us to be able to bale up several more bales for the winter time so that we had a big hay supply. So in the middle of 2024, I was finally able to quit my job of 20 years and to work out here full time. And that just gave me the ability to do so much more out here and get quite a bit more done. So one of our projects was to also build this fence line hay feeder. It keeps the hay nice and dry. We're also able to load it from outside of the fence and feed the cattle hay without having to drive a tractor through the pasture, rut everything up. It just made feeding out hay in the wintertime so much easier. So after the fence line hay feeder was built, we expanded this gravel parking area. So we dug out all the topsoil back here, we filled it in with new gravel, and now we have more equipment storage here, and we've got a nice place to drive and load the hay bales in the feeder. So our next accomplishment in 2024 is we built a loading chute. We needed a lot easier way to be able to load and unload cattle and sheep. So we built it along the back side of this barn here. It ties in with the corral fence. And then as it gets to this corner, it turns about 20 degrees, just so that we can back the livestock trailer up to it perfectly. And then it just allows us to be able to make the loading and unloading process go a lot smoother. So just to summarize, over the last 5 years, we have spent a lot of time trying to establish our hay fields so that we can make plenty of hay for our livestock. We have been focused on fencing in the pastures that we have, and then taking the 12 acres in the front, which was actually in corn and soybeans, and taking that farm field and getting it fenced in and turn that into a pasture as well. That way we could use every bit of our 41 acres and be able to have more pasture to raise livestock. Now there's several things that we didn't accomplish or didn't make really any headway on, and one is the barns. We didn't make any like repairs or improvements or upgrades to the barns that we have. We also didn't really get a good livestock handling setup. We don't have something set up that we can run sheep through or really run cattle through efficiently so that we can take care of our livestock the way we should. And we also have not done anything with well water. We have 2 wells on the property. Both of them are not working, but it would be nice to get one of those wells working and get well water out to all 4 of our pastures. That way we can provide our own water instead of having to buy it from the rural water system. Right now, our water bill usually runs around $100, $120 a month because of all the livestock that we have to water. And there's also several more improvements that we can make around the property to make everything more efficient, make it easier on us. And you know, we just didn't get as far as we hoped to. I think that's normally the story. I think a lot of people have big ideas and they have big goals and really motivated to get them done, but the truth of the matter is you only have so much time, right? So we didn't get as far as what we hoped to in this first 5 years. We did get the majority of the first 4 years. We did get that done over the course of 5 years, but there's still quite a few things I wanted to do that we didn't. So in the next 5-year farm plan, the good thing about it is I'm here full time now. So I should have plenty of opportunity to be able to get a lot more goals done every year than what I did when I was working full time. So our next 5-year goals are pretty ambitious. So you'll just have to wait and see what those are. But I think in the end, it's just good to know when you look at something like this, it's good to know it takes time, right? I think a lot of people get down and depressed and discouraged because they get a new property and they're 2 years in and they don't even have half of what they want accomplished yet. And that's just the way it goes. Everything takes time. You just kind of got to go with the flow and just slowly work your way through it. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to slowly get there. It may take another 5 years, but we're slowly going to get this property exactly the way we want it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Maybe you found it interesting. If you're interested in the next 5 years, we'll probably have that in the next video. So I think that's going to be it for this video today, guys. So hope you have a great day. I'll see you next time.